Welcome to Frazier Deeter's Culture of Compliance podcast series, where we discuss compliance as a competitive advantage in today's marketplace. I'm Sabrina Serafin, partner and national leader of Frazier Deeter's process, risk, and governance practice. And today we have a returning guest, Danny Goldberg, friend of the firm and founder of GoldSRD, a leading provider of staff augmentation, executive recruiting, and professional development services. And Danny is a well-known speaker regarding communication, internal audit, and risk. And today we've asked Danny to talk to us about communication and culture because Danny's got his fourth book coming out. And the first question I have to ask is, please talk to us about writing a book, particularly one that's directed to the internal audit community.
It's always been, I've always enjoyed writing, and it was always on my list of, kind of like my bucket list of professionally of what to do. So after, what did I do? I was professional commentator on a book which I basically co-authored, and then we wrote People-Centered Skills back in 2014. I've written a kid's book, and this one I think added some challenges, I guess would be the right term, because we signed a deal back in August to write this book, and I had written some, and this book has been in my head for probably 2 or 3 years now. And I emailed Wiley because we had a deadline of December 31st for initial draft. And I was assuming it was a soft deadline. And my assumption was wholeheartedly incorrect. It was a hard deadline, not necessarily a hard deadline, but in order to keep our timeline and keep our pre-sales, they really pushed me to get it done by December 31st. So December 8th, I started wrapping up most of my traveling for the year. And between December 8th and 9th and December 31st, I was lucky and proceeded to write 55,000 words. And people think it's a lot of work, and it was. But I think the good thing is that once you, and as a writer, I think once you picture it and once you kind of know the storyline, I can tend to free flow at that point and get a lot of context and get a lot of words down on paper. And as you read the book, it's a fictional story about a mentor and a coach and a trainer. And a lot of these stories are half true, but they're fiction, if that makes sense. They're, what do they say in TV series, based on true events or something like that. So it wasn't very far-fetched to come up with good stories because in many respects, I've lived them.
Well, let's get into some of the content of the book, and also interested to know what inspired you to write this.
It's always been a passion of mine to write specifically about communication because, interestingly, CAEs, CEOs, CFOs, everybody wants great communicators, but there's not a lot of good guidance out there on good communication skills. And what we found is our book in 2014 was the first one that came out that really covered the wide-reaching topic of communication in general. This has been, I guess, in my head for a couple of years now to write a good follow-up and carry forward a lot of the storylines and characters that we had in the first book, and really take the communication, the viewpoint of communication up to that next level. So we worked on some basic communication skills in the first book, and we really wanted to look at some higher level skills that would help people not only get a job, but excel in their job and get promoted.
What an interesting approach and concept, Danny. What are some of the key topics that you have captured in this book, and how is it different from the initial people-centered skills?
As I mentioned, Sabrina, I would say that the first book covered some basics on rapport building, conflict management, a little bit on body language, really skills like that. What I always imagine as your second level communication skills is we focus our attention on emotional intelligence, which is a skill that everybody needs in today's world, every leader needs in today's world. We also focus on coaching and mentoring, which I think has taken on even more importance in our current environment. Presentation skills, public speaking, crisis management. Again, these are skills that I wouldn't expect a staff to be well versed in, but as they continue to grow and mature and look for that next role, these are all skills that I think will be looked for in them in that next role.
Great point. Danny, this year many organizations found themselves really scrambling earlier this year to roll out communication tools to support remote work teams. Do you have any observations about the good, the bad, the ugly of virtual team communications?
It's been a kind of a hodgepodge of experiences, because we went from early March to doing, I'd say 95% of our courses live to 100% virtual for the last 4 months. And we've done hundreds of hours of courses delivered to many, many different variety of customers. And there's a few things that I found that seem to work well and maybe not so well. With big groups, from what I found, I think that the natural tendency is to make sure we can see everybody and everybody's off mute. What I found in those situations, when you're over 15, 20, 30 people, it's impossible to manage. And people tend to communicate less because there's too many people that might hear them. So what I found, once we get to that size group, it's better for the folks to be muted and typing into the chat, and then we unmute or put them on video as necessary. And again, I would have never thought that would be the case, but I've had it time and time again where the conversation is not being stimulated well, and the only thing I can attribute that to is the format, really. A couple of other things that I've seen that have seemed to work well. There's a natural hesitation for video chat. Nobody likes to see themselves on video. I think that's fair to say. I've been doing this for 11 years. I speak in front of audiences all the time. I do not do camera very much. It's awkward for everybody. But I think everybody's just got to get used to it. And there's certain conversations, when we go back to crucial conversations, that have to be done live. And they're not going to be live per se, but at least I can see you. I can read your face. I can read some of your body language. When you're having, when you have a conflict, or when you're delivering constructive or appreciative feedback, there's certain conversations that you need to be able to see the person. And what I found talking to a lot of clients is a lot of people have their video turned off at all times. And I think there's sometimes where you're just going to have to really require that to be on. I've also seen a propensity for people to be in contact more often because we're not there physically with each other. And I think I think there are some benefits that have come from all this, and I think that's one of them. I think a lot of the basics or the foundational pieces of agile auditing, if we're talking auditing in general, this daily stand-ups, those are things that I think a lot of companies and a lot of internal audit departments are going to start integrating as part of their methodology. And they might not be per se agile, but we need that human contact and human intervention on a daily basis, just to stay in touch and really to help make sure that people don't feel like they're out on an island alone. And we lose that semblance of corporate culture that every organization thrives and needs.
You just moved on to my next question. What are you seeing with companies who are striving to maintain their corporate culture? What are they implementing, or what are they doing to help those employees feel like they're not alone on the island?
This has been, again, really just an interesting time, because you're seeing, I think in many respects, corporate culture being reshaped, how organizations are treating their employees. Are they still connected? Do we still buy into the message of this organization? Or are these careers that people have turning into jobs where I sit in front of a computer at home all day? What's the difference between working for X or working for Y? Is it just salary now? And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So you're seeing constant and more frequent communications. From what I've seen, a lot of organizations are the consulting firm seems to do coaching and mentoring very well. I'm seeing much more from just general corporate America, more formalized coaching and mentoring programs, so people feel comfortable that they have someone to reach out to. More frequent communications in general, either video, email. I've started texting a lot of people a lot more than I used to. I'm kind of at that age where I've just had to get used to texting, even though maybe it wasn't my means of communication, my normal means of communication at all times. But anything to stay in touch and engage with people, I've seen a lot of organizations take on. Additionally, I've seen a lot of CEOs and a lot of chief auditors and CFOs have weekly town halls. Weekly or biweekly town halls. It might be 15 minutes talking about the organization, and then it's 15 to 30 minutes QA, and being transparent, continuous communication on any topics that the organization, that the people are worried about. It's a stressful time. Hopefully we're starting to come out of that now, but I think a lot of people are worried about their future and the people around them. And I think the only thing an organization can do is talk honestly about the situation, how the company is doing, and how the company is addressing these issues. I'm sure a lot of us are going to see a lot of companies, or could think of a few companies that, wow, they've done amazing things for their employees. I want to work for them. And then you've seen other companies that you might question working for them moving forward based on how they've treated their employees and thus maintain their corporate culture.
Great point. We're judged in our harshest times often, and your true character comes through. And you mentioned earlier coaching and mentoring. So let's talk about the importance of this topic in the current environment, and how is it going to evolve as we are really still distanced?
Yeah, and as I kind of mentioned, Sabrina, I would say consulting firms have a tendency, and it's more natural in their environment, to have more formal coaching and mentoring programs. I know when I was at Arthur Andersen many, many years ago, I had a mentor, and we checked in periodically. Coaching is more to give that constructive feedback on each project or periodically. I think what you're going to find is, and what we've seen, more companies are putting a little more structure around it, because a lot of organizations have this very, very informally structured. It works, but I don't know if it works well in this current environment. Those touch points need to be consistent and timely, and need to be scheduled. And with an informal environment, I don't know if those are. I think there's a lot of concern for yourself, and maybe we don't have those good touch points if it's informal. When you have more of a formal environment, it seems to work better. So I've seen organizations start assigning or asking for feedback as to who could help mentor you during this period and for the future. The coaching, I think, is a little more clean in regards to who would be doing that, because that really should be someone maybe that you are reporting to on this project, and can really give you tangible feedback on your work. On the other hand, if we're all in this virtual environment, depending on what software you're using, can I see your work? Can I, am I able to be a clear judge of it when I'm sure you get my point here. There's a lot of complications that are brought up through this. But I'm definitely seeing more and more formal coaching and mentoring programs in organizations.
Yeah, so we've been fairly resilient, and I think that people have adopted this new form of communication and are beginning to maximize it to where we're seeing that this may be the term, the new normal. I don't think is so much of a stretch, because a lot of what we've had to implement is working.
I tend to agree with you on that. I think that there's going to be a lot of things that have come about over the last 3 to 4 months that are going to stick. I almost cringe at the new normal term because it's so overused, quite frankly. But
I apologize.
But I tend to agree with you, though. There's a lot of good things that have come through this that I think we've gone from one extreme to another, and we're going to find some balance between. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of people, specifically in the internal audit and risk world, where you're going to be asked, do you need to be in the office? And I think the answer most of the time is going to be probably not. And you're going to use a lot of these trends and tendencies permanently.
That's right. And it's going to be our responsibility, particularly as leaders, to support those solutions that are working and those work situations that are being productive, and balance it with bringing back some of the old school face-to-face interactions, right?
And one other thing I want to comment on, we were talking about coaching and mentoring and culture specifically. One major opportunity for all firms right now, any organization, is if you maintain that strong culture, and the employment pool has completely opened up in this environment. You don't have to have employees that are in your city anymore. You could hire them, quite frankly, anywhere. And if you have that good, strong corporate culture, you can still maintain some semblance of brand loyalty, regardless of where your employees are at.
Excellent point. And Danny, I want to thank you for joining us today. We're really excited about your new book and can't wait to get our copy. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to Frazier Deeter's Culture of Compliance podcast. Please join us for our next episode as we continue to discuss transforming compliance requirements into investments in your business.
Thanks for listening to one of Frazier Deeter's branded podcasts. To learn more, connect with us on LinkedIn or visit us at FrazierDeeter.com and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.